Remember when your mum said, "Don't play with your food"? Well, space is no exception. Let's take a journey back to a time when one intrepid astronaut decided to swap his space helmet for a chef's hat. Imagine this. You're floating around in zero gravity. The Earth is but a beautiful blue marble outside your window. And you, my friend, have a hankering for a sweet, crumbly cookie. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? Well, as our astronauts soon found out, baking in space isn't as easy as pie, or cookies in this case. You see, in the weightlessness of space, crumbs don't just fall onto your lap or onto the floor. No, they float away, getting into every nook and cranny of the spacecraft. And let's not forget, those tiny particles can wreak havoc on the delicate instruments and controls. Our astronaut, in his quest for a homemade treat, had unwittingly created a cosmic cookie crumble. He watched in dismay as his spacecraft turned into a snow globe of cookie crumbs. A delicious disaster, if you will. This cookie catastrophe underscores the importance of careful meal planning and preparation in space. Every morsel of food that astronauts consume has to be carefully considered. It needs to be nutritious, easy to eat, and crucially, it shouldn't create a mess. Because in space, you can't just whip out a vacuum cleaner to tidy up. The aftermath of the cookie crumble was a tedious cleanup operation. Our astronaut had to painstakingly collect every floating crumb. A tough job, but someone had to do it. After all, you can't just leave cookie crumbs floating around, can you? This culinary adventure turned cautionary tale serves as a reminder of the challenges of living in space. From the mundane tasks of cooking and eating to the more complex ones, everything takes on a new dimension in zero gravity. So, the lesson here. Space might be a vacuum, but it's not a vacuum cleaner. Your crumbs aren't going anywhere. Ever tried drinking a cup of tea on a roller coaster? Well, imagine doing that in space. Now, let's rewind to an incident that could easily be dubbed the floating fluid fiasco. Picture this. An astronaut, fresh from the rigors of a spacewalk, decides to quench his thirst. He reaches for a water pouch, confident in his ability to handle the clear liquid in the weightless environment of his spaceship. But oh boy, was he in for a surprise. You see, in the absence of gravity, fluid dynamics take on a whole new dimension. Instead of neatly pouring into a glass, water forms itself into floating blobs, defying everything we know about liquid behavior on Earth. It's a bit like trying to catch a slippery fish with your bare hands. Only the fish is in the air, and you're in a spaceship worth billions of dollars. Our unsuspecting astronaut, unaware of the complexities of fluid dynamics in zero gravity, squeezed the pouch a bit too hard. The result? A rogue blob of water floating freely, causing chaos in the spaceship's intricate electronic systems. It's a bit like having a water balloon fight in your living room, but with much higher stakes. Now imagine trying to control this floating fiasco. It's not like you can just mop up the spill. The water droplets are everywhere, clinging onto surfaces, floating into nooks and crannies, causing potential damage to crucial equipment. Our astronaut had to spring into action, using absorbent towels to capture the water droplets before they could wreak more havoc. This incident underscores the unique challenges of hydration in space. Astronauts have to rely on specially designed drink bags and use straws to prevent the water from escaping into the cabin. It's a far cry from the simple act of pouring a glass of water on Earth. So, if you're thirsty in space, remember, it's not as simple as pouring a glass of water. Thought your gym fails were bad? Try exercising in zero gravity. Picture this. You're an astronaut, thousands of miles from Earth, floating in a tin can. You know you need to stay in shape, not just to look good in your spacesuit, but to keep your muscles and bones strong in an environment where they don't have to work as hard. So you strap on your resistance bands, ready to get that heart pumping. You pull, expecting resistance, but instead of feeling the tension in your muscles, you find yourself sailing across the spaceship like a human cannonball. This hilarious incident happened to one astronaut who underestimated the power of zero gravity. It's one of those moments that are funny in hindsight, but also carry an important lesson about the unique challenges of life in space. Here on Earth, we take gravity for granted. It's what keeps us grounded after all. But in space, there's no such thing as up or down, and simple tasks become complicated. Even the most mundane activities, like exercising, require a whole new approach. You see, in the zero-gravity environment of space, astronauts lose muscle mass and bone density at a much faster rate than on Earth. This can lead to serious health problems. So daily exercise is not just a routine, it's a necessity. It's a different ballgame altogether, one that involves strapping yourself to a treadmill or using specially designed resistance devices. But as our astronaut friend learned the hard way, even the best laid plans can go awry in space. The resistance bands, meant to simulate the effect of gravity on the muscles, instead launched him across the cabin when he pulled on them a bit too eagerly. Luckily, our astronaut was unharmed, though his pride might have taken a bit of a bruising. And if there's one thing to be learned from this zero-G gym fail, it's that space is full of surprises, and even the most routine tasks can turn into an adventure. So, the next time you skip leg day, remember, at least you're not being catapulted across a spaceship. You can't trip in space, right? Wrong. Picture this. An astronaut brimming with excitement is on their first spacewalk. They've trained for years. They've dreamt of this moment since they were a kid, and now they're floating in the vast expanse of outer space. All is going well until they decide to push away from the spacecraft a bit too enthusiastically. A misjudgment of their tether sends them spinning uncontrollably, arms flailing, attempting to regain control. It's a spacewalk stumble of epic proportions. Now you might be wondering, how does one stumble in space? Well, in a zero-gravity environment, stumbling takes on a whole new meaning. It's not like tripping over a stray rock or a tree root on a hiking trail. In space, a stumble might look more like an astronaut spinning helplessly in the void, their tether being the only thing preventing them from becoming a permanent satellite of Earth. This is precisely what happened to our poor, overzealous astronaut. They pushed away from their spacecraft expecting a gentle drift, but instead got a wild spin. Their world became a dizzying blur of stars, Earth, spacecraft, stars, Earth, spacecraft. In their headset, the calm voice of mission control was a stark contrast to the chaos outside their helmet. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. These space stumbles, while hilarious to us Earthlings, provide invaluable lessons for astronauts and space agencies alike. They highlight the importance of precision and control in executing spacewalks, reminding us that every action in space has an equal and opposite reaction. The smallest push can send you spinning, and without solid ground to regain your balance, you're at the mercy of your tether and your training. This is why astronauts undergo rigorous training for years before they're allowed to step out into the void. They practice in underwater environments that simulate the weightlessness of space, learning to move slowly and deliberately, mastering the art of turning a stumble into a graceful, controlled float. So, space may be a place to float, but it's definitely not a place to stumble. Space fails. They're not just funny, they're educational. Let's take a quick rocket ride back through the stories we've been sharing and see how each blunder has paved the way for better understanding and innovation in space travel. We started with the cosmic cookie crumble, a hilarious yet enlightening episode. Who would have thought that a simple act of eating cookies would become a space oddity? But it did, and it taught us the importance of food packaging and preparation for space travel. Now, astronauts enjoy meals that are not only safe and easy to eat in zero gravity, but also nutritionally balanced and even appetizing. Then there was the floating fluid fiasco, a reminder that in space, even the most mundane tasks can become complicated. This incident underscored the need for specially designed equipment and procedures to handle liquids in zero gravity. Today, thanks to these lessons learned, astronauts can hydrate and even enjoy a cup of coffee in space without causing a floating fluid fiasco. Our journey continued with the zero-G gym fail. This amusing incident shed light on the challenges of maintaining physical fitness in space. Astronauts' innovative solutions and adaptations to exercise routines have since become standard practice, ensuring that those venturing beyond our atmosphere can maintain their health and strength in the weightless environment. And who can forget the spacewalk stumble? It was a clear demonstration of the unpredictability of space expeditions. However, every stumble is a step forward in improving safety measures and equipment for spacewalks. Today, astronauts are better equipped and prepared than ever for the unexpected challenges they might encounter in the great beyond. So, while these space fails might bring a chuckle or two, they have each played a pivotal role in shaping the future of space exploration. They have led to new discoveries, innovations, and improvements that have made space travel safer and more efficient. So the next time you hear about a space fail, remember, it's one small stumble for an astronaut, but one giant leap for mankind.